Whether you're a mom or an adult child, even a boss, having a job, coworker, partner, do you ever find that you lose your sense of self? You don't even know who you are sometimes anymore, particularly in the role of mom, if you are a parent. Do you find that you get so caught up, so wrapped up in being a mom and doing all the things that a mom has to do that you don't even allow for time for yourself to take care of yourself? Or if you do allow for it, you feel somewhat guilty when you do. Do you sometimes secretly harbor a wish or a dream that you could just be yourself, just be who you were pre having kids? If you answer yes and you resonate with any of what I'm saying, then I highly invite you and encourage you to listen to this week's episode where my guest, Dena Farash, and I talk about how moms can just sometimes feel so miserable and lose who they are. And then how can you regain that sense of yourself? How can you still be a mom, be a wife, be a partner, be a boss, be a worker or a friend, and still hold on to who you truly are? So tune into this week's episode. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I am Kim Gross, your host, and today my guest is Dena Farash. I'm going to start with a quote as I normally do. And the quote is: how you do one thing is how you do everything. Author unknown. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Kim. My name is Dena Farash. I am the founder of an online space for moms called the Mindful Mom Revolution. I am a national speaker, author, and serial entrepreneur, mom of three, wife. And woven in between all of that, I am also my own independent person and individual self, which needs to come out because I play many different versions of myself throughout the day. And so I always like to remind myself really that I am a person too, worthy of that title and that connection.
I love that. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But do you want to share a little bit about your backstory? I love what you do. And tell us about your book, too, by the way. You said you're an author. So, what is the name of your book and what's it about?
My book will be coming out in just a few weeks, and I'm very excited for it. My book is essentially my story about the two times that meditation saved my life. It is called From Party Girl to Mindful Mom. And as I'm sure we'll discuss in this conversation, a lot of my story had to do with my particular pattern of escapism. Right. And I learned as a very young child that emotions were too much for me. They weren't accepted in my home. And so I internalized that as they aren't accepted within me. And so anytime I felt intense emotions, I looked for a way to escape them. Right. And so as a kid, it was little things, watching TV, Hey Dude, Unsolved Mysteries. I hope I'm speaking to the right generation here. And then as soon as I got access to them, it became drugs. That was the easiest escape for me to make sense or really to just run away from what was happening in my life, whether it was my home life with my parents and the tumultuous relationship that they had, or whether it was just the teenage angst of figuring out who you are and putting all that pressure on yourself, especially in high school, thinking this has to be the best years of your life because that's what the movies say and that's what we're told. And so if you are a child in the middle of angst and they're not the best years of your life, what's the message? For me, the message was I'm failing, I'm not doing it right. And that was way too much for me to handle. So I had to escape. So my whole story really comes down to my propensity to escape and then becoming a mom and having life smack me down and ground me and say, but you can't run away from this. What you can do is you can choose to make it better. And so, really, I started my entire business, my entire platform on this desire to make my life as a mom feel better and to stop escaping and feeling like crap all the time.
So, first of all, thank you for sharing that and being honest and vulnerable. And let's talk about this escapism a little bit. I want to just hone in. on how I feel that it's an epidemic amongst our teenagers and young adults. So I am a little bit older. I'm 55. So even still, though, I do remember even when I was a teenager feeling the need to escape as well. But the way that I did it, escape from the pain, I was trying to run from pain, right? We are wired anyway. We're wired to move away from pain and toward pleasure. So in your case, you were moving away from pain, and the pleasure you were using was the drugs, right? It gave you that pleasure for the moment or escaping whatever was alcohol, whatever we did as teenagers, sex, whatever. I did all of those things as well as a teenager, but I also escaped the way that I felt in my reality by becoming a perfectionist. So you said there's all this pressure that your teenage years are supposed to be your best years. And I hear you and I feel that. And so what I did was I'm like, I try to dive into it by being a perfectionist. Oh, okay, maybe the way that the best years of my life are supposed to be excelling and achieving, and because all of the external validation, but it was still all escaping. And as I escaped, I was falling into a role, a pattern of perfecting and pleasing. And every time I did that, I was losing more and more of myself. And that's when I started to wear the mask, thus the podcast that we're doing right now. Do you have any thoughts on that or your own experience to share?
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, right? The way we receive validation as children is the way we mold ourselves into becoming. And so my childhood trauma is probably a little bit different than yours, right? Because the external validation I was often told, and what sticks with me the most was that I wasn't good enough, right?
Mm,
And so I didn't try to rise to that occasion because I was already an honor roll child. I was already taking 3 maths instead of 1. I already had a sense of accomplishment within myself. And so instead of continuously raising the bar within myself, I went to resentment, right? And I
mm,
just shut it off. Instead of becoming a perfectionist, I just internalized, if I'm not good enough for you, then screw you. And
mm,
so that was really the mask that I wore in my childhood, early adulthood, and even still struggle with, because I just go straight to, if I'm not good enough for you, then forget you, I'm out of here, right? I'm not trying to raise myself to your bar. I already come into it thinking your bar is ridiculous. Take me as I am. Take me as I am. And if that's not good enough for you, that's fine. We just don't have that connection, right? And really, that my pattern was this hardened sense of self, which was like, screw you, I don't need you anyway. Screw you, I don't need you anyway. And that was repeated time and time again in my life. So I didn't internalize, I didn't put the pressure on myself to be better for other people. I just shut down the connection. I just shut people out.
okay, so you didn't put the pressure on yourself to be better and meet expectations of others. So, question for you. How were you with yourself? Did you have this internal pressure, this inner critic that, because you said you received a message that you weren't good enough. So, did that tape continue to be on repeat for you? And so you became your own inner critic and putting pressure on yourself to be better?
That's a good question. I never internalized that lack of self worth.
Mm,
I somehow, and I still joke about it. It's a trauma joke, but I joke like I became who I am despite my childhood.
mm,
I do walk around with a high level of confidence, but it probably is from the mask of screw you, I don't care about you anyway.
mm,
Right. And so I didn't internalize it. I didn't tell myself I wasn't good enough. I still don't do that to myself, thank goodness, because I know a lot of people struggle with that. I just went to screw you, I don't need you anyway. And I just walk around in my own world. This is actually a common theme in my book because I had created this persona really, especially in my late teens, early 20s, and I called it I'm the shit. Right. And so I'm the shit took care of everything. It took care of my connection with men. It took care of me getting drugs. It took care of me just getting things sent to me in my life, especially late teens, early 20s. So my persona became I'm the shit. I don't need you anyway. But I want to say that because I'm not saying that to brag because that was very vapid. So, like, on the outside, it was like, "I'm the shit, I don't need you anyway." On the inside, I was like, "Man, I just want a hug. I just wanna be able to be vulnerable. I just wanna be able to cry." Right? So, I wasn't like, "I'm not good enough, they don't like me." I wasn't self-deprecating in that way, but there definitely was an emptiness on the inside because the outside persona was, "Screw you, I don't need you." And on the inside, it was like, it might be nice to have a friend that I could cry with and hug, but that I didn't allow for that.
Okay, so I love this line of conversation because you're right. Like, that wasn't necessarily my path. I definitely took the path and the road of people pleaser. I desperately sought out other people's approval and validation. But I have plenty of people in my life that do walk the path of I'm the shit and I don't need you. I'm good. I'll cut you out. I'm not saying this is your case. I'm asking the question. I will say for the people that I'm thinking about in that their particular case, even though they had the persona of I'm the shit, I'm tough, I'm confident, I'm strong, I got it together. But deep inside, there was still a core wound of I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of belonging. And because they weren't connected, like deeply, intimately connected with their true self and who they are, strip away all the outside accomplishments or whatever, or the bravado deep inside, there was a wounding of I'm not worthy of love and belonging. So I'm wondering if that was at play at all for you or can be at play, or you're saying that you are totally connected to your true nature.
What I am saying in all fairness is that is not a theme in my life. That's not a
Mhm.
constant theme. That's not something that I am conscious of. Might it
Mhm.
be in there? Sure. Every child yearns for that
Mhm.
connection, that validation from their parent. And when they don't receive it, I think they take one of two paths. They rise to the occasion and they say, okay, who do you need me to be in order for you to love me? And then they chameleon themselves and become that to
That's
achieve
me.
that love. That's the
That's
people
me.
pleasers. That's the perfectionist.
Yep.
And my path, it was I have an accurate sense of self. I had received, even as a young child, enough external validation that let me know that I was smart and that I was worthy, right? And so even at 40 years old, I sit in this place and you can't take those things away from me.
Yeah.
And there were just certain things that happened in school, right? Because I recognized we compare as human nature, especially as little kids. You see how you level up against other kids in gym class. You see how you level up on against other kids on your spelling test, on your math test. We understand that at a very early age. I was fortunate enough to receive external validation from a school setting that let me know that there were things about me that were very worthy, right? And so I did take that with
Yeah.
me through my whole childhood. And so the way it manifests in my life is very different. I don't feel like I'm never not smart enough. I don't feel like I'm never worthy enough, but I do very quickly get triggered if one of those two things come to an impasse, if that
Mm.
makes sense. So
Mhm.
in an adult, like for me, I have this very strong belief that I'm a very smart person. And as an adult, if I feel like that is challenged, I have no chill. I have no chill about me, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm not willing to let that go. That was such a core foundational belief about who I am. And when I feel like that's challenged in an adult conversation, or social media even, really things that don't
Yeah.
even matter, but because we have all this outside stimulus that triggers us in so many different ways in nowadays. So even on social media, if I feel like I'm being challenged in that way, all of my childhood angst, my willingness to fight come right to the surface again. I will say
Mm.
that is how it replays for me as an adult.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about motherhood then, because that's your jam in a big way, right? And we've been touching on it in this conversation so far, how in one way or another, whichever path people tend to go down, have a tendency toward this particular way or a tendency to go the way that you have gone. And I want to just say that for people that might be listening who do find themselves feeling lost or getting lost in the roles that they play, whether it's a mom, whether it's you get lost in the role at your job as boss, as employee, as an adult daughter. I even shared with you before we started recording. When my mom was alive and I was in my 30s, I was still acting as a young child with her. I was losing myself in the role of trying to be the perfect daughter instead of being a grown ass woman in my 30s having sovereignty over myself. I didn't. So I know you use meditation a lot. So maybe we can speak on how someone who might be listening is struggling in the role of mom and losing herself completely or any role, how she can find herself. Because you said that at the very beginning too. You said, I still, even though I do this and I do that and I do this, at the end of the day, you said it's very important to you to still hold on to you and still be you. So, any thoughts on that?
I think we all play a random list of avatars throughout the day. We have things that we do and places that we go to that we love and roles that we play. And sometimes we fully embrace them and we jump right in and they become this pseudo sense of our personality. And I'll share with you real quickly
Love
what
that.
my most favorite version of myself is gym Dena. When I'm at the gym, I haven't showered, no makeup, I have a hat on, I'm wearing stinky pants and combat boots over my boobs so that I can work out, right? But I'm so confident.
Mm,
Gym Dena is so confident. She's strong. She walks around smiling and connecting with people. It is probably one of my favorite versions of myself. Right. And so before we talk about finding ourselves and losing our own identity, I think it's really important to understand and embrace the fact that we all have multiple identities, different roles, different relationships that we either have to or choose to play throughout the day. Right. Sometimes, like for me in motherhood, it felt forced. This was a role that I had to play now, a relationship I had to develop, and I couldn't find any way to escape. And if you remember from just a few minutes ago, that's my jam. If there's one thing I'm great at, it's figuring out how to distract myself from the pain on the inside. But being a mom to 2 young kids, my oldest 2 are only 18 months apart, so I had a baby. 9 months later, I got pregnant again. I had another baby, and I went from playing all of these outside roles, all of these different avatars, these different versions of myself, to solely being a mom. Even though I still had a business at the time, I still had reasons to get out of the house. I definitely still went to the gym with my little babies because that's still my favorite version of myself. But I got so caught up in the fact that this avatar, this role as mom was one I couldn't escape. Couldn't escape. I couldn't leave it at any point. Even if I went and walked around the block, I'd come right back to the mom, right? I could not leave it. Even if I needed to go to the supermarket by myself, I'd go and pick up bananas and cucumbers and come right back. And I was still really drowning in this role as mom because it almost felt like it was completely all encompassing. And these other parts of my personality, these other avatars who were within me couldn't come out because motherhood was overshadowing everything. And so really what happened, I'll share with you. I was sitting on the couch counting down the seconds until my husband walked into the door just so I could say, here are the kids. I got to go to that supermarket trip by myself, right? I have to find that escape, even if it's just 15 minutes. And he walked in the door and I was like, listen, I got a jet. I really need 15 minutes to myself. And he looked right at me. He said, I'm getting in the shower and I'm meeting my buddy at the gym. I'm really sorry. And he walked into the shower and the kids were playing, watching TV. And I ran outside and I just had the most epic panic attack of my life. And I started screaming to God in the back of my house. And I was like, what is going on? I just felt so trapped. It's so funny because this is the first time I'm even saying it out loud in this way. It all makes sense because I started this conversation telling you that my pattern, my mask, was my escapism. And I couldn't escape being a mom. And so I had this epic panic attack, this meltdown in the back of my house, and I was freaking out. I'm screaming at God, and I'm like, this isn't me, right? I want to be a happy person. I am a positive person. But I felt so stuck. I felt so trapped, and I couldn't escape that. And so I heard a little voice, which I believe was the voice of God, that said, Dena, you just need to chill. Through my tears, I'm like, I don't even know what that means right now. And God was like, meditate. Meditation has been a theme in my life as well. My escapism in my early teens, late 20s led me to an abusive relationship with drugs. And so instead of going to rehab, I went to an ashram where I was forced for 30 days to meditate twice a day. I had no idea what meditation was. I was a very angry kid. I had lost a lot of friends. I blamed a lot of people for their lives being lost. and I was stuck in these patterns, right? So when I was first at the ashram, it was meditation. And let me tell you, as somebody whose pattern is to escape, when you have to sit there and shut your eyes and sit there with your thoughts, it is hell on earth. You can't escape that. And so I really struggled figuring out what to do with my mind, figuring out what to do with all of these emotions and all of these repressed and suppressed thoughts that I had just stuffed down as low as I
Oh,
possibly could for 20 years. And now I had to sit there with my eyes closed for an hour twice a day, and I was losing it. Right. I was also coming off of drugs. So I was in so many transitions. I'm gonna go back to my original story. So I have this history with meditation, and it was really forced meditation at the time. But what it taught me was that I was capable of sitting with my thoughts, that I didn't always need to escape. But my surface, my outside pattern, the thing that really drives the way I behave, this escapism, as a mom now, I forgot all of that until this moment in my backyard where I'm screaming and God said, remember meditation. And I was so overwhelmed then, even. I was like, how can I do that? I have two babies.
mm,
I have two babies. I have a business which gets me out of the house with my kids, but I'm with these kids 100, 200, 300 hours a week. I don't even know. And God said, remember meditation. And so in that moment, what I did is I was really intentional about setting myself up for success, because sitting for an hour twice a day with two babies to meditate or to become a victim to my thoughts again was not possible. It wasn't doable in my life. So I told myself really succinctly, we're just going to do this for 5 minutes a day. And I'm going to do it for 30 days. And I'm just going to see. I just wanted to observe to see, does this make a difference? Does this change my life? And really, it was just about a week or two in of just sticking to this commitment of meditating for 5 minutes a day that I started to realize that I was changing. But I wasn't really changing. What actually was happening and what allowed me to break free from the restraints that I thought this role as a mom was keeping me in was the awareness of my thoughts. Because the true gift of meditation isn't that you like become this person who walks on flowers, right? And tosses rose petals everywhere. They go, that's not me. If you haven't figured that out by
yeah.
now, that's not me. That's not my personality. But what meditation did give to me was the awareness of my thoughts. So little things, when I was washing the dishes and I was replaying an argument I had with my mom in high school as I'm washing the dishes, I could say to myself, I could recognize this thought and say, okay, this isn't right now. This isn't happening right. Or something else that was, it seemed like a little thing, but really was monumental. I used to sit there all the time and fold the laundry, and I'd be so mad at my husband because he had 3 outfit changes. He had his work outfit, he had his gym outfit, he had his leisure outfit, and I'm sitting there in 5-day-old leggings and a sweatshirt, no bra, folding laundry. I haven't gotten out of the house, and I'm just folding this man's laundry, and I used to do it with so much resentment until through my meditation practice, I started to recognize that I was folding his laundry feeling this way. So I made some small shifts. Thought about, man, this guy gets up and goes to work, even if he's not feeling well, so that I could be home with my kid. And my resentment turned to appreciation. And P.S., if you are in a partnership, appreciation is a game changer if you don't have it. But because I felt so trapped, I couldn't get to my pattern of escapism, my appreciation for my husband just turns into resentment because he got to leave. He got to go out. He got to finish a thought, a conversation with another adult. And so, really, meditation didn't change who I was. It just gave me the awareness of the fact that I had so many thoughts swirling around in my head all the time that actually weren't helping me. They weren't helping me live a great life. And I wanted to live a great life.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. First of all, thank you so much for, again, being so vulnerable and honest and sharing your story. And secondly, to really just show how meditation doesn't have to be something specific or set aside. Like it can be just in those moments, like being mindful in those moments of just watching your thoughts, catching your thoughts, and making these little micro shifts in the way your thoughts are, just paying attention to them. But more importantly, what I really want to highlight what you said was that when you were folding your husband's laundry, and I can so identify with that one because I still to this day sometimes I'm like, damn, how can this man wear so many clothes in just 2 days? But you're 100% right. It's about shifting my perspective or shifting your perspective. And realizing that really when we're feeling resentment, when we feel miserable, when we feel shitty, that it is almost always an opportunity to go inward and to see what's going on inside of oneself. It is very rarely on the outside. Now, that doesn't mean that circumstances don't happen. It doesn't mean that people don't get raped. It doesn't mean that you don't get cut off in traffic. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't break into your house. I'm not saying any of that. Life happens, circumstances happen. But if we don't want to be victim to what happens in life and those circumstances, we have to take a stance on how do we want to react or respond to what is happening. How do we, and I hate to be so cliche, but how do we stay calm in the storm? And so if we don't want to be miserable as a mom or as a person, it is about going inward. It's always about us. And that was so hard for me to freaking take in because well, not me. I'm perfect, right? I was wearing the perfectionist mask. It is definitely my husband. It's definitely my mother. It's definitely everybody else. But no, it's not. The way that I show up in response to whatever my husband says or does, or my mother or my kids, is on me. And if I want to stay calm and be in freedom from that victimhood, that mental prison that you were talking about. By the way, I so identified with your story about a mom that's so honest that mothers, like the middle of the night when your kid wakes up and they're puking or have a fever, and the last thing you want to do is get up in the middle of the night and go attend to your child. Or if you're with them all day long, just want 10 minutes to myself. That's so real, Dena. Thank you for sharing that and saying that because I think a lot of moms feel so freaking guilty to say that out loud, but it's so real. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's real. So thank you so much for all that you shared, all of your insight, your wisdom. Lastly, I think we're just round out by saying, where can people find you?
Mindful Mom Revolution. Yep. You can find me on all social medias, either by my name, Dena Farash, or the Mindful Mom Revolution. I am on TikTok. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I do always love when people connect with me on Facebook because that is where I get to share my personal stories the most. So please feel free to find me personally at Dena Farash or visit me at my website, denafarash.com.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. And I will have all of that in the show notes. But once again, thank you so much for this conversation. I really feel invigorated and in charge. You really inspired me. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Kim. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. So there you have it. If you resonated with what I said in the beginning about losing yourself in the role of mom, wife, daughter, partner, boss, friend, coworker, and you just didn't know what to do to regain your sense of who you are, I hope that this episode, number one, gave you a feeling of knowing that you're not alone by just resonating with the stories that both Dena and I shared as a mom and as one who lost ourselves in the role of mom. And then just simply what you can do to start feeling grounded in the sense of who you are and how to just still stay true to yourself and hold on to yourself and to really know that what is going on in your external world is more about you than it is about what's actually happening. If you have further questions or you want me to go deeper on this particular topic, feel free to comment, let me know. And if you did enjoy this episode and you enjoy this podcast, I invite you to subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me, you can leave a review on Apple, or just let me know if there's more that you want to hear, or if there are things that you have questions about or you don't relate with. Share it all with me. I'm open. I have my mask off. You can let me know. So, again, I appreciate you being a follower and for listening, and I hope that you have a great week.